Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday to you all. Thanks for being here. This is episode 2 of Meetings Moving Forward, the Food and Beverage Deep Dive. We will be recording, just to let you all know, we started the recording just a minute or two ago. So if you're just getting on now, you may not have seen that. So I wanted to make sure I mention that to you. If you're not comfortable with that, then you may want to keep your camera off. Otherwise, as we go through the day today or through this next hour, I do want to encourage you all to be asking questions and interacting in chat while we have 2 fantastic panelists today with lots of good information. I do want this to also be a conversation since we're all in the meetings industry, and this is for everyone's benefit. So as we get started here, well, as I just mentioned, we are recording. And then I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Katie Paulin Leclair. I'm the founder of the Leclair Group. And I started doing these events this summer, Meetings Moving Forward, because I felt like as someone in the meetings industry, and I think I'm not alone in this, that it's good to not just look behind us at what we've been through, but to look forward. What do we have? What's on the horizon? What's coming up? And to share that information with each other. I think we as a community of meeting planners, it's very important that we work together. That's how we're going to get through what we've been through so far and how we'll keep succeeding and moving forward into the future. So again, welcome to all of you for being here today. I would like to introduce to you our 2 panelists. Today we have Devon Burns, who is the Vice President of Rooms and Food and Beverage at Omni Hotels and Resorts. And we are also joined by Heidi Andermack, co-founder of Chowgirls Catering, located here in the Twin Cities. Welcome, Heidi and Devin. Thanks so much for being here. And just to give you a quick rundown of how we're going to go today, I have questions that we've prepared for the panelists. They'll be answering those questions from their perspective, and they each have different perspectives from the hotel side and from straight up catering side. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, all of you as attendees are encouraged to chat, to comment, to share your insights, and to converse with each other. And for those who registered and aren't able to make it live, we will be recording this and sharing it with everyone afterwards. So with that, let me launch into our first question. And that one is, in your opinion, what has changed for the better in food and beverage over the last 18 plus months? And Heidi, if you don't mind, I'll ask you to go first this round.
Sure. Well, we went through a really big change at Chowgirls. We went from catering high-end events, whether it was business meetings or business events or weddings and social events. We went from doing that we switched to catering emergency relief meals, hunger relief meals for Second Harvest Heartland. And one of the things that transition brought awareness to was the food supply chain. And the food systems, and not just the food supply chain, but all kinds of supply chains. And I think that whole experience elevated that awareness for lots of people, not just for us in the food industry. And we've been working on different issues with sustainability, including recycling, but also this food rescue concept for a while. And that just brought that straight in the spotlight. And so that was something that was a great change that happened for us in 2020. And then the other things related more directly to events specifically were more intimate events. So we did continue a little bit of catering during that time. Mostly we were doing this hunger relief meals. But the catering that we did do were smaller weddings, backyard weddings, or business events that were virtual. And so we needed to learn a new way to present our food. And that was a really cool process of coming up with new packaging for individually packaged things. You know, instead of a giant cheese board that was all elaborate and gorgeous, we had to make beautiful little cheese boards that would then be delivered to individual people for their virtual meetings, or at a wedding, personal containers that people could take and eat on their own. So I really appreciated that. Those things that came out was creative ways of thinking and new ways of thinking in general. We learned more flexibility. We used to have people would put down a deposit of 50% on their event, and they were locked into that date, and we had to change that. So instead of we ended up changing to a booking fee. So we're not taking as much money up front now. And then also just learning to be flexible with rescheduling for people and things like that. That was a really big hurdle to jump over. So I think those are our biggest takeaways.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks. And Devin, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. I'll agree with everything Heidi said. I think it was an opportunity for us to, really reset as a business, and really reevaluate or evaluate. It's amazing how much you take for granted when you're in the daily grind and things being status quo. So as we know, in the last 18 months, nothing's been status quo, and it's all been a lot of discovery and a lot of, like I said, reevaluation. So I think specifically in our banquet and catering space, we've been forced to be, which is a silver lining, I think, of COVID, we've been forced to be a lot more thoughtful with everything from procurement, food purchase to how do we prepare the food in the kitchen, and what does the staffing model look like there to the front of house service execution of that. And question along the way, what makes sense? What do we need to change? Again, supply chain issues, those continue. We're addressing those, but the good news there is we are being more resourceful, and we've had to be with smaller, smaller operation vendors, or rather than relying on one main wholesaler distributor, really looking local and seeing who our partners can be for specific markets, which I think from that actually we can create or provide oftentimes even a fresher product, something maybe more meaningful for the local guest, or for those group guests that are in from out of town, where we always strive to provide some local flavors. So really looking at that more, and then we'll probably talk about it further on in the call, but staffing has really been turned upside down, right? A lot of our associates pre-COVID have either gone to work for other industry, and we've recruited as many back as we can, and we're still working on that. And then just others still getting them back to the workplace. So in the kitchen, front of house, making sure that we have the right manpower, if you will, retraining a lot of new associates, and making sure that when we retrain, we're training to the right things. So I think that's been a plus. It's a lot of work, but the teams are doing a nice job with that. And then front of house, like Heidi said, it's really about finding, collaborating and finding win-wins. So rather than the magical buffet that, we would just put out there for a breakfast, lunch, dinner all the time, because of safety concerns, right? Is the buffet the right thing? Can we be more thoughtful in what makes sense for different groups? The buffet is not gone, and I'd say that it's coming back, and it's probably never went away, but we need to reevaluate. Is it food stations? Is it individual presentations? And I think with that too is hopefully along the way, and as we evolve, it's less food waste. And I think as an industry, I think we've been guilty of way too much food waste in the past. And we always try to, we have the conversation around, can we donate the food, et cetera? That's great. And that's ideal, but we also know the reality that doesn't always happen. So I think this has been an opportunity for us to evaluate food quantities, presentations, not having that food waste piece as well. So that's been a big plus for sure. And then creativity, creativity in smaller presentations, creativity in food stations that are safe, that match our group's needs. Really looking to move the needle there as well. So that's a few things.
Yeah, both of you bringing up some really good points. And I think what I'm hearing from both is it's that creativity piece that's what's kept you each and your businesses in business. And as planners, I think that creativity is what we all have to look at, adjusting how we do things moving forward. So what are the issues then? And I know you touched on a few in the first question, but what are the issues that are most top of mind for you now and as you move into the near future? And Devin, I'll have you start this time.
Yeah, I would say exactly what I just mentioned, right, briefly, but staffing for sure is our number one focus item, opportunity to really prove, really show to our associates or to our new associates where we're making recruiting efforts that we are a good career choice, right? And I think as an industry, we took a hit during COVID because our associates saw our hotels close, they saw our restaurant offerings diminished, banquets and catering diminished as well. And so our associates then, some of them were forced to look elsewhere for employment. And we kept as many of our associates employed as possible. We were a population, our associate population of about 20,000 associates pre-COVID. And we went down to under 2,000 associates company-wide. So our population was diminished. And I still get choked up or, emotional when I think about that and going through that piece. And now recruiting our family members back. And the good news is, last count, I think we're up to closer to 14,000 now. So we've definitely grown back and are headed in the right direction. And that's good news. A lot of those associates are new. So that's where I mentioned training before. That's a piece. So where we have short staff and then we have new associates, and new is good because they bring a new energy and new perspectives and hopefully new ideas to the team, but really training them up and providing them the tools to be successful. So that's a good opportunity as well. Supply chain, we mentioned, that continues, and we're really, as much as we're, forcing ourselves and pushing ourselves to be creative, we're really asking our vendors, our distributors, our wholesalers, our suppliers to do the heavy lifting as well. And again, that may be us at the end of the day relying on more partners, more suppliers, more wholesalers, distributors to get the job done. And I think that's actually a good thing, because there's competition with that. There's hopefully creative solutions to that. So we're asking our partners to come to the table with their own creative solutions to help us be successful. So yeah, those are the top of mind. There's others as well, but I'd say what keeps us up at night is definitely the staffing piece and the supply chain piece. And then every day as we bring more offerings back, as banquets and catering continues to come back, just making sure that we don't fall into the past practice, the bad habits of previous, that we're remaining, thoughtful and focused on doing it better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think all these are very important for planners to keep in mind when they're coming back when they're having caterers or going into a hotel, to not expect that things are going to be exactly how they before March of 2020. So adjusting planners' expectations, and also, of course, planners adjusting their stakeholders, their participants' expectations. Because it flows down the line.
Right.
So
that's a great point. And we talk a lot about meeting our groups, our clients, our guests where they are. So we have. And there's a wide variety of expectation there. There's a wide variety of what's the perception of safe, right? The perception of clean. One group is going to have, and we have groups now who are coming to us with, can you guarantee everybody's been vaccinated? So we have that on one end, and then we have social catering where they don't want to hear anything about masks, and they're with their family and friends. And if you even mention it, they're going to maybe be upset with you. So you've got all ends of the spectrum in that piece too. So to your point, how do we flex, right? Still do the right thing for everybody as far as safety and cleanliness goes, but how do we flex? How do we meet our groups and our guests where they are? And really that really boils down, in my opinion, to having open dialogues. So with our meeting planners, our contacts, what's important to them, what's important to their group, and then we have to have a real conversation about what are the resources that we have at each of our hotels to make that happen. So, yeah.
So Heidi, over to you. What are the issues that are top of mind for you now? And I'm going to guess that maybe some of them are going to be the same as what Devin just mentioned.
Yeah, certainly. Safety of our guests and our staff are a priority. And training has been a huge challenge. At the beginning of the pandemic, we laid off 120 of 133 employees. And because we turned to making the meals for Second Harvest Heartland so quickly, we were able to hire back a number of people. And throughout 2020, we were at about 60 to 70 staff. And now that events have come back, we're back up to that 130-ish count. But a lot of those people throughout are new people. So it's been interesting trying to trying to go through this training while we're trying to do all of these events, doing everything simultaneously. So we kind of had to reinvent our catering business in a way, but it was a great opportunity to have this clean-ish slate to start over. And taking our staff into keeping our staff in mind is really important. So again, the safety of the guests and the staff, and being clear in our communications with our clients about what we can provide and about what our standards are. That's been very important. And as things keep shifting, we're trying to shift with that. And so far it's working out. The biggest thing that we're looking forward to right now is preparing for the holiday season. So as people are coming, we don't have the outdoors any longer. That has been a big thing that's helped our events all summer, is that we have this backup of being outdoors. And as it moves more indoors, and as we get more variants of COVID, we need to be prepared for some kind of hybrid of what we experienced last holiday season and what we've had in the past before. So we're preparing for smaller parties. We're preparing this concept of boxed and individual type things, or smaller party packages. We're also preparing, we've been working with smaller staff than we used to in the past, and really making sure that we're all on the same page. That open communication, like Devin was saying, is huge, to make sure the client's expectations, planners' expectations, and our expectations are all on the same level, and that we're not over-promising. But we're also kind of setting boundaries about how far we will and won't go. We definitely lost some clients at the beginning where they were just flat out, we're not going to wear masks. We're not going to, this whole list of things that they weren't going to do. And we said, maybe this is not such a good fit for us. You might be happier with a different caterer, because they didn't even want us to wear masks. So it was, and this was before vaccines had really gone out well, and we were we were planning for a fall event. So yeah, that was a big was a big one. So we're kind of, anticipating some of that for holidays in some ways, but now that so many people are vaccinated, I think we'll have less of that. But this concept of being flexible and working with people is really important moving forward.
So I didn't have this question prepared, but you're both kind of touching on it. And so I'm going to throw this one in here for you both, because we're talking about communication and expectations all the way around. How is that working with the clients that you've had so far, with the groups that you've worked with? I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is, are they coming in with expectations here and you guys are here and then there's, some frustration? Or
I feel like we have had a few people who've been frustrated. Mostly people are relieved to find out how far we're going with our safety precautions. And then on the other end, we have people who are being stricter than we're being, and we're trying really hard to go ahead and accommodate them as best we can, and work with them. So I feel like for the most part, it's working out well. And just being, at the beginning, we had like long documents of this is what we will and we will not do. And then we went into some of our early events and it was like, okay, we had 3 strikes and we can close down your event if people were not wearing their masks and coming up to our servers and not masking themselves. And we ended up realizing, like, once people start drinking and dancing at a wedding, they're not going to wear their masks. And we just have to keep ourselves protected as best as we can, limit our interactions up to that point. So there was the ideal and then the reality. Mm-hmm. And we realized that we need to, if we're going to indeed do events like that, we need to compromise a little bit, but not so much that we're completely jeopardizing our staff.
And Devin, how about you guys on the hotel side? Is there a disconnect between, right, communication?
Yeah, no, we've had a few where, expectations, just like you said, are one thing or to the extreme, and we're not able to deliver that, or either A, we don't have the resource, so we have to have that honest conversation, or B, if it's putting, for example, our associates' safety in question, then that's a non-negotiable for us, right, as a brand. So, and hopefully, and I think they do, I think the vast majority of our clients and our great guests appreciate that we do take that serious, and that's commonality. And so we haven't had the friction or the discrepancy there. We're we may not be, just like Heidi said, we may not be the right choice for everybody. We're going to do absolutely everything we can to flex and to, again, meet our groups where they are and our clients where they are. But it has to be safe. It has to be the right thing. And then we're always evaluating, right? This is, I think, still the period of discovery. We're always evaluating what's the CDC saying, and what's the, what are the local jurisdictions saying. That's something we learned early on, is that it's tough to have, we have a few foundational items that are brand wide for sure when it comes to mask wearing, or, earlier on where it was capacities, some of those things were widespread. As we've evolved, a lot of it is really local. A lot of it's really local jurisdictions. So being flexible and cognizant to that, and our GMs and our directors of catering, convention services, and sales and marketing at each hotel are really the experts. So San Francisco Omni, that team is much more of an expert on what's current and what's CDC or local direction than we are at the corporate office. So we're calling and we're having those conversations all the time too, and then being collaborative on solutions. You bet.
It's been interesting to watch what's happening in other places, San Francisco, LA, or I'll just say California and New York, for example, to see, okay, they're taking these first steps with doing these things. We can probably anticipate that something similar is going to happen here. So that gives us a little bit of chance to prepare for how we might need to be more flexible. But then when it comes down to it, you really, like Devin saying, working with the local jurisdictions to follow their guidance and trust that their guidance is the best thing for our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to pause for just a second and remind everyone who's on watching, if questions come up, if you want to make comments, be sure to interact on the chat. We are monitoring that. All right, now I'm going to go to our next question. We talked, costs were touched on a little bit through supply chain and through staffing. So what can you share or elaborate with us on that, on the cost issue?
Well, we're finding that we definitely need to pay higher staff wages. We're having to offer incentives for people to work on holiday weekends. And right now we're feeling pretty solid, but people were being tougher about negotiating their starting wages with us. And so we've had to pay higher than we had anticipated, even though we already do pay what we consider, we pay, our starting wage was $15 an hour for kitchen and warehouse and serving staff. And we're actually starting higher than that now. And that aligns with our values of paying a livable wage. And in reality, is $15 a livable wage? I don't think so. So we're examining that. And then we also have lots of other supplies that we need. We need new safety supplies. We have logistical things that we're having to pay people for that we weren't having to pay before. And then with supply shortages and all of that added up is kind of coming up to a higher cost per person. And I think that's kind of the reality of the future. And like I said, paying a living wage is really important. And even if the minimum wage is raised to $15 an hour, is that really livable? So because we're a values-based company that values people, planet, and profit, we're having to raise our prices a bit, and seems like the people who work with us are okay with that because they understand what we're doing with that. We're not doing this to make more money. We're doing this to cover our expenses, but also to treat our staff better and to make sure that we can offer the quality service that people want and expect.
Devin, what's your perspective on that, on the costs?
Yeah, just like Heidi said, costs across the board have increased. That's the reality. So that's commodity costs from food purchasing, beverage, non-alcoholic, alcoholic beverages, paper costs. For example, we just opened a new hotel in Boston, and comparing our what we call operating supplies and equipment cost, and not total volume, because Boston's a larger hotel than our previous opening. But when you look at the per unit cost, a significant increase. And that was, our previous opening, our most recent opening before Boston was Oklahoma City back in February of this past year. And that's not just that's national pricing that's increased, right? So it's not just Boston market pricing that you would assume would be higher, but it's our brand wide, nationwide pricing that's increased. So same with Heidi, we have to account for that. We do an annual kind of a price comp set review when we consider our menu pricing for the following year. We've changed that to now be quarterly, where we're evaluating our costs and then our prices based on those costs, our prices to the customer. We also want to do the right thing, meaning not gouge our customers either and add to this inflationary pricing that in a lot of areas is happening right now. So, you know, is there a short-term cost hike on certain items? Those aren't things we're necessarily looking to pass on to our customer, right? But if we're seeing it as, and we're getting feedback, analytics from the marketplace that beef pricing cost has increased by 10%, that's here to stay, then we account for that and we adjust our pricing accordingly. The other piece, like Heidi said too, the staffing and what's a fair wage. I'd say as an industry, we had a compensation problem pre-COVID where we were not paying in a lot of respects enough. And that's from housekeepers to hosts in our restaurants. So I think that's a silver lining where we've had to evaluate to be competitive, to be again a career choice for our associates, and to provide a living wage and doing the right thing for that. So we've definitely increased hourly wages, management salaries across the board. I'd be hard pressed to find probably a single position that we haven't addressed or really looked at and made some kind of adjustment. So that's, and as a business, right, payroll is our biggest cost, bar none. So that has to be evaluated. We, transparently saying the obvious, we are a for-profit business. So we have to figure out, it's on us to figure out how to stay profitable and not pass all of it on to the customer. Because if we go too high on our prices, we know we may not be the right choice for our guests. So we have to absorb some of it. We have to look in the mirror and drive efficiencies. Again, like I was talking about before, be thoughtful about our production, our purchasing, production, and how do we service our guests so it's meaningful and we're driving the profit that we need to drive for our ownership group. So it's a lot, it's a puzzle, and we're accounting for it and continuing to evaluate as we go.
Yeah, and I think you touch on businesses like each of yours need to have some profit to stay in business, to be able to exist and be out there to provide the goods and services that you do to your customers. So I think that's a really important thing that sometimes consumers, not always, but sometimes consumers don't think about that piece of it, that what it takes to keep a business operating and in business. So I think that's a good point. We have a question from one of our participants. Other than what you have already shared with us, what do you wish meeting planners understood better or would take into consideration when working with food and beverage?
Yeah, I think I would start with just have a thought, be open to alternatives, right? Be open to hearing or talking to the local team, having an honest conversation around what are the needs of the group and objectives, which is where we should always start, right? And then be open to feedback from that hotel as to maybe new ideas to satisfy those needs, right? Maybe new ideas of how to service a group or how to flex on space, or maybe it's a different arrival pattern that may make sense based on, and I'm making this up, but it's probably true for some of our hotels, based on front desk staffing. Maybe it's not everybody arriving 100 people all at once at the same day, and we have the opportunity to flex on that to make it a better experience for the guest and a win-win, right, from a staffing perspective. So just be open to those creative solutions, or that have some of that flexibility. At the end of the day, it's up to us as the hotel to make it work and to provide the service that our groups need. But we all know this is not normal times. And I think the more we can collaborate, the better we all are.
Yeah, I agree completely with what Devin said, and making sure that your clients have realistic expectations as well. I mean, everybody should shoot for the moon with their events, but we may need to scale back on some things or shift and look at doing things a different way. So helping to find what can realistically be done, but with a creative mindset too. It doesn't mean, no, you can't have that. What are better ways that we can accommodate that works for everybody? I feel like in catering, there was a lot of this scurrying for, you know, whatever you want, we'll get it, or we'll do it. And that will, you know, continue to be part of the process, but maybe toned down a little bit to bring it back down to reality.
And I would add, and I would appreciate your both of your opinions on this, but I think as a planner coming into it with we're on the same team, we're on the same side, me as a planner, you as caterers, hotels, that we all want to provide a good end product to the participants. And so approaching it collaboratively instead of as adversaries, I think goes a long way as well.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, keep those questions coming, you guys, in the chat there, but I'm going to move on to the next question now. And that is there anything that you are happy to say goodbye and good riddance to? Heidi, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, I think that in thinking about this, we've kind of touched on it a little bit already, but this has helped us to find the clients that align with our values more. So the people who are so demanding that they don't care about anything else but what their needs are, they aren't a good fit for us. I mean, we make it very clear when you come to our website or when you're part of our process that we have these values. We're a values-based company, and our values are people and planet, and we're working to infuse that throughout our whole work process. And if there are people who don't share those values, they're not necessarily a good fit for us. And we used to, I think, try to please those people more and bend on our rules a little bit more, our values. And now we're shifting that a little bit because those people don't seem to want to work with us, but there are plenty of others who do share what we value and want to work with us. So that's been an interesting wake-up call, I think, for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Devin, how about you?
Yeah, you bet. Some of the things we've touched on already, but I'd say goodbye to buffets where they don't make sense. That's a good one. And where they're wasteful, and be more thoughtful about it. Like I said, the presentation or the style of service. You know, as we said goodbye to a lot of associates temporarily, it's been very nice it's been great to have some, like I said, new energy and new ideas with our new associates that have joined the team. So I'd say that's a plus. You know, the plus side of saying goodbye to a few people is we get to say hello to some others, and that's been great. I'd say what else? Just doing it right, taking things for granted, and just doing it because that's the way we've always done it. Doesn't direct, you know, it's not banquets and catering specific, but I'll take room service for example. As an industry, it was 20. You know, there's some of the expectation at full service hotels was 24 hours a day room service, 7 days a week, and yes, that's nice. But when you have 2 covers on a Wednesday lunch is that necessarily the right thing to do as a business? Probably not. So rather than spending the money on things that don't translate to the great guest experience, let's spend that money as a business on things that do. And that goes back to that profit conversation of, yes, certain things are more costly now as a business, but if we're efficient and we're being thoughtful about where we're spending our money, I think we don't have to pass all of those extra costs on to our customer. So that's great. And then goodbye to paying wages that weren't livable wages for certain positions. And that's to me personally, and I think my team too, and Heidi mentioned this, doing the right thing for our associates. That's been a big plus for us, really evaluating and making sure that benefits make sense. I think we've always had great benefits, but again, now we're competing not just with the Westin and the Marriott and the Hyatt, it's with Amazon and Walmart and Target and medical sales companies. And how do we remain competitive to be an employer of choice? So that's a big positive, and saying goodbye to the way we used to do that and just compare ourselves to the hotel next door. Those days are gone.
Mm-hmm. Less of that commoditization then.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. When we as planners are working with businesses that care about the people, not just the profits, that comes through. It comes through in the people that you're talking to and dealing with on a daily basis. And for me personally, those are the kinds of companies that I prefer to work with, are the ones that care about the people. I mean, that's where it all starts and ends, right. The people that work there. All right. So another question that we had was, what are the trends that you are seeing in catering and food service? And I'll have you start first this time, Devin, please.
Yeah, some of the trends, I think some of the trends that were even starting pre-COVID, I would say, more local purchasing, local farmers, farmer to menu in the banquet space. I think we've always done a pretty good job of that in the restaurant space. So moving the needle on how do we do that in the banquet and catering space for larger groups and different style of menus and service in that regard. So that continues. I'd say more mixology at the bar, and not just a single spirit cocktail. So a vodka soda or a gin and tonic. Those exist and guests still order those. But how do we provide freshly muddled fruit and what you might otherwise think you're only going to get at a higher finesse lobby bar, for example? How can we do that in the banquet space? So finding the right supplier partners, fresh ingredients that are easy to execute. Again, we know we have a lot of new associates. We have bartenders that haven't necessarily been bartenders before or have a lot of experience with that. So how do we provide them the tools to create a wow cocktail? So I think that's fun and trending for sure. And again, getting away from the buffet, repeat on that piece. But how can we do plated, served? How can we do more food stations or action stations? Get more creative in that space for sure. I think residential and flex space, and that'd be the other thing I think too. Pre-COVID, definitely going that direction. But how can we flip a restaurant space for a group and use that space? How do we do a portion of the lobby where it's a living room type setup and do that for an event space? As we build our new hotels, kind of that WeWork space and that flexible work office space within the hotel, that continues to be big. We're actually building new hotels with those components that you wouldn't have seen before. And I think that's exciting as well. I think flexible space in general is definitely here to stay and part of the puzzle.
That's interesting too on the so are you saying on the WeWork space, and I know this gets away from food and beverage for a second, but you're creating spaces within the hotel where people can have like a day pass or just go kind of work where you don't have to work in your room, or maybe you're local and you come in?
Absolutely, you bet. So Oklahoma City Open in February has a teamwork space, is what we call it, where individual guests can go in and utilize, and there's actually within that larger space, there's a smaller breakout boardroom space. So small groups can go in, and it's if it's available and you need it, we give you the key and the access to it. It's pretty fantastic. We're going to do the same type of setup in Austin downtown with that renovation coming up later this year. Boston, which we just opened, has 2 flex boardroom spaces within what we call the 3-meal restaurant, or attached to that. So beyond the private dining room, which a lot of restaurants have, it's space with existing kind of conference tables. So it's flexible. You can have a meal there. You could have a team meeting there. Individuals could use it as office space. Just again, really trying to provide more creative solutions on, and it makes sense for us too, right? If we can have a space that maximizes use, that's great for our business model as well.
That's really cool, Devin. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's fun.
There's been a lot of those collaborative workspaces popping up around Minneapolis, all over the place, and to hear that coming into the hotel area that's cool.
Makes sense. And Heidi, does Chowgirls still have some event space that you either own?
We have an event space in the Solar Arts building, which is above Indeed Brewing in Northeast Minneapolis. It's an arts building. The event space is on the top floor. We did not renew the lease on that, so we're done with that space December 31st of this year. So we had it sitting empty for the entire pandemic, which was tough. But we got PPP money, which helped to pay the rent for it, and that's what that was for. So it hurt for a while, and it doesn't hurt as much now that we received that assistance to help pay that rent. But as far as as far as trends in catering that we're seeing, I talked about these individually packaged meals, that concept of either kind of care packages or snack packs. So for example, when a wedding party is there early before the wedding and they're getting ready, we've been inviting brides and grooms to purchase these individual snack packs, like a personal charcuterie board that they can give out to each of their wedding party and the parents, the people who are waiting around during the photos. And then that also translates into virtual and whatever kind of hybrid thing. We did a lot of things during the pandemic that I think are around to stay. This whole virtual concept, the way we're meeting right now, I have a friend who started the Geek Squad, and he was like, I talked to him really at the beginning of the pandemic for a lot of guidance. And he said, where we are right now, this wasn't supposed to happen for a couple more years. So we kind of launched into this virtual meeting space early, and we've figured it all out. And one of the things that we're figuring out is how to do this with catering. And we did a number of events during the pandemic, and we're still doing more of them, where we're sending individual or smaller meals, perhaps with some champagne or whatever, and sending it to different locations, or a business will come and pick them all up, or we'll deliver all of them to that business, and then they distribute them to all of their guests, and everybody can be part of an event together, sharing the same food, but they're in their own spaces. And that's something that I think we're going to continue to see that in various ways. There will be hybrid versions of it, or maybe total virtual. So that's really exciting. And then piggybacking on what Devin was saying about, I also had local sourcing on there. That's something, so with Chowgirls, I keep talking about us being a values company, and our values are community, sourcing local ingredients. We've been working with local farmers since we started in 2004. And we're seeing more and more of that. And then this concept of food waste, we started with that by, instead of, by composting our food waste. And then that evolved into donating leftover food. And then we went to this next level during the pandemic of food rescue, where we were saving food from restaurants and then making that into these emergency meals. But like Devin was saying, to bring that, we got to take it further. And I think people are, in general, in the public, are, the awareness is being raised with that. And there's a greater appreciation for not being so extravagant that you're building a buffet that's just covered with shrimp until the last minute of the event. You know, have that out for a portion of the event, and then let's take that away, and you can replace it with something else, instead of having to make sure that everybody has every last bite until the very end. So I think that's going to continue, that there's a new awareness of our supply chains and local businesses, local farmers, and I hope that continues to grow, because it's essential to our local economy. And even in Devon's situation, where there's hotels all over the country, it's essential to those local economies. You know, Austin has its own local economy, so why wouldn't you support where you are to strengthen that community base? So I think that food awareness is an ongoing trend as well. But the fun stuff is those little party packages.
Love it.
So Devin, and you know, Heidi mentioned the virtual side or hybrid. Is Omni stepping into that at all, assisting clients that might be doing hybrid meetings, and how is that affecting you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd prefer that our clients come to us and meet in person, obviously, for many reasons. But we also know the reality, right? And the reality of smaller groups and comfort with smaller meeting formats. And then we have a great in-house audiovisual team that can take care and manage all the connectivity that's needed and the virtual meeting that's needed. And then for, you know, even during the peak of the pandemic, I know our sales team was fantastic about reaching out to clients with resources on connectivity, and again, using some of our audiovisual expertise on that piece and being helpful, hopefully, in that regard. But yeah, no, we'd love to have everybody come to our properties in person. We know that's not reality right now. So having hybrid meetings, I think, is also probably here to stay. And like Heidi said, it's probably a couple of years early. That was probably heading that direction anyway for some meeting formats. So it's important for us to embrace that, and those that stay with us, whether it be the board or the executive team or whichever component of that group, stay with us, and then making the other arrangements for the virtual or for the hybrid is here to stay, I'd say, for sure.
Well, I'm going to put this out to our attendees that are here. Any questions that you have for Devin or Heidi? Anything that you want a little bit more information on? Add it into the chat. We've got a few minutes left for this session today. And the intent was that this was to be a conversation and not just people talking at you. So we really like to hear from you all as well. So I'll give that a couple of minutes for people to put in any comments there. While we're waiting for that, do you, Devin and Heidi, have any kind of last thoughts, or, oh, I forgot to mention this, or I think this is really important?
I'd say two things that Heidi mentioned that kind of spurred some additional thought on the trending, right? Or what's on the horizon is more creative ways to manage food waste. At a couple of our hotels now, we've actually installed what we call food digesters. And it's an enzyme that breaks down all food waste to brown water, which we then circulate and reuse, recycle for watering the plants, water, irrigation water at the hotel, which is amazing.
Oh, wow.
To have that. They're not cheap, these food digesters, as you can imagine, but it literally breaks down all food waste, including the bones of like a chicken leg, into brown water. So I'd see that on the horizon. Hopefully that technology, and I'm sure it will become more affordable, and we can have it brand wide. But for example, in Boston, we have a food digester. So the process is all banquet leftover food is stored or put in separate waste containers and then taken to the food digester. We also have one at Omni Dallas, which is a pretty early rendition of a food digester, because that was installed in 2012.
Wow.
I think that process and that technology will be expedited for sure. And then the second thing, as Heidi mentioned too, food to go, beverage to go, grab and go, right? And that's in our coffee shops. That's prevalent now in our full service restaurants, where guests can have, it's like our own Uber Eats. It's maybe where we don't have room service now. We're doing Omni to go, or our own version of Uber Eats, where it can be delivered to the guest room in disposables. So it has that safety component. It can be picked up at the front door. It provides a room service type offering, but it's the efficiency of an open restaurant, right? With an existing kitchen, staff, back house, front of house, versus having this whole other third entity of room service that probably wasn't as efficient, like I mentioned before. And then, I guess the overall drive, right, with food to go is, it's a quality offering. It's not, it's not your cheese and crackers that you may have had before, but it's a great sandwich, and it's made fresh, and it's the local ingredients. Guests really are looking for that offering or that option throughout the day.
That's really interesting.
That food digester is really cool, Devin. That's the first I've heard of that, and we're always trying to stay on top of that next level of food waste. So I'm definitely interested in learning more about that.
Shoot me a note and I'll connect you to the engineers that know more about it than I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions come in. So I'm going to wrap it up. We're right at 1 o'clock. Thank you both, Heidi and Devin. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for your insights, your information. I think it's really important that we, as planners that work with you and your businesses, know these things. I think it helps us be better partners. And so thank you very, very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Appreciate everybody showing up too. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thank you too.